Hey guys, this is Ahmed Rafizafar and I created the opening sequence for Awaz-Eghaib. So let's get into our topic of discussion today. How does my film use or challenge conventions? And how does it represent groups or bring light to social issues? Firstly, the word Shade Ghaib was picked up from a very old poetry of the renowned poet Allama Muhammad Iqbal, and it is a Persian and slash Urdu word, and it translates to an unseen voice. So, with that out of the way, we can get into the main plot of the film. Firstly, our main character or the protagonist is Durez, who had lost his parents in a very traumatic and devastating car crash a few years ago, and as a result copes with his traumatic experience through the consumption of alcohol and other drugs. And basically, the main plot of the story is that when the opening sequence begins, we see that Durez is in a part of his life in which he has already lost his battle with alcoholism and he has succumbed to all of his desires, which leads him to basically blur the line between what is reality and what is false, leading him to several nightmares and having frequent panic attacks, and oftentimes hearing the voice of his mother and basically reliving the sequence of events that occurred on that day where he lost both of his parents. So, at its core, it's a really traumatic and depressing story, and it sheds a light on different groups of people and people who have gone through traumatic experiences in the past, and it sheds light on their issues and how they tend to fall into drugs and alcohol and trying to cope with all of their problems. And even if they do that, they're not able to, and at the end of the day they just end up making it much worse. So now that's out of the way, we can get into the second portion of this podcast, which is to tell you that whether my film uses or challenges the conventions that are used in psychedelic and psychodrama films. The end of the day, obviously, everyone has different kinds of traumatic experiences and everyone deals with them in different ways, but this opening sequence basically sheds light on one of the ways and one of the most common ways that people usually cope with them, which is through drugs and alcoholism, which tends to make their situation that is worse, leading to things like suicide or other cases in which they not only harm themselves but also the people that might be trying to save them or like help them, or other people as well, who basically do not have nothing to do with it. So I would say that mostly my film uses these conventions with the usage of sound and silence as a narrative device, as well as isolation. This can basically be shown by using the surrounding ambient sounds that are already in the main shot, as well as using silence to create a scene in which the viewers basically empathize with the main character and they get to see what they're feeling and their internal conflicts. And another part of using sound as a narrative device is the usage of suspenseful music, which keeps the audience on their toes and wanting to know that what is going to happen next and what are the next steps that our main character is going to take in order to achieve his goal, or what are going to be the next step in his life. So our next convention is going to be visual distortion, which is very oftentimes used in these psychedelic and psychodrama films, and which can also very easily be achieved through the use of clever editing and lighting techniques, such as in the editing factor we can use flashbacks to tell what actually happened in the past of our main character and to show that why he is traumatized in it, which is used in the opening sequence. Secondly is the usage of montage and jump cuts. Montages basically are used to save time and to basically create a chaos after a seemingly linear sequence that seems calm, and then suddenly the audience is put into a series of fast moving clips in which there is complete chaos. And this is achieved through the usage of jump cuts, which is basically a quick change in sequence of scenes, and it is heavily inspired by the legendary director Martin Scorsese and his film which was released in 1970s, and its name is Taxi Driver. And now we come over to the lighting, and basically lighting that I have used is also heavily inspired by Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver in the 1970s, in which he used lighting along with sound as a sort of a narrative device. And basically the lighting was used to show how a character was feeling at that moment. If he was angry, then the lighting around him would be red, and if he was depressed, then he would use cool colors. Similarly to that, when the nightmare begins and our main character is in the car, I use cooler colors and like a distorted kind of feel to show that he's afraid and he's scared, etc. And with that said, I can say that we have finally concluded the main topics of our discussion. And as a conclusion, I would like to say that yes, my film uses the traditional conventions of a psychodrama and a psychedelic films, as well as it represents groups that have mental illnesses and sheds light on their social issues, such as what they go through and what their traumas are. But obviously this is just one kind of a trauma, and everyone's trauma is completely different. Some that are much more severe than others, and some that are less severe, but neither way they are still traumas. It brings awareness to the viewers that what are some of the challenges that people that are going through these kind of things may face. I hope that you enjoyed my opening sequence, and stay tuned for further updates.